All right, well, thank you. Typically, this report would come from our recreation supervisor that's in charge of the pool. This year, just timing-wise, with the escape of our previous recreation supervisor and Kalisa Owens, who you saw earlier, her timing was just right. So when everything was just crazy and just kicking off, that's when she started. So a lot of things were already set in stone when she got here, and so I was still learning Moscow and our processes. I thought it was better for this particular report that I would give this. And so next year, she'll be up here. So anyway, each year we give you a report on how the year went. This year in particular, we had some issues that I thought needed to be discussed a little bit, but overall it was a pretty darn good year. The big splashes of the year, of course, it was hot. It was hot. It was really hot all summer. It was busy down at the pool. Mechanically, the pool operated very well. We were open 77 days. Right at the very beginning, we were closed one day due to the weather. As you can see, we had a lot of people in our swim lessons. Howling at the Hamilton had 321 dogs, and they donated $3,500 toward the Humane Society. 100 youth participated in the youth triathlon. And of course, the issues that we actually had to deal with were with the lack of swim diapers or swim diaper use, and some staff training that we need to focus on. And I'll talk about those in a minute. Thought I'd get this one out of the way right up front. You can see our revenues to expense ratios there. Looks pretty good, but there's still a pretty good size subsidy there. And this year we had $1 per hour pay raise for the employees trying to be able to compete with the Washington side. It's very difficult now to get enough employees to operate this pool. And you'll see this again in the, of course, the approved budget for 18. And we're still behind them. But our revenues, we did pretty good because we were open so much. We also had some unusual rental revenues that we received because the U of I pool was down, and so they rented the pool, the lap lanes in the mornings. So we had the benefit of that. Okay, here we go. Okay, so always nice to show you kind of a history of where the rates have been. Trying to keep it affordable, but as you can see with this, trying to keep up with the expenses. I mean, we're trying hard to close that gap, but when you raise the salaries, of course, things go up. And I'll also address this a little bit later on as well. So you can see where we're at these last 2 years, and you can see where we're at this coming year. That's about 5%. So attendance this year, these are just kind of fun numbers to see how it went. You can see the colder month in June. You can see how many people. July just exploded, and then in August and September we had fewer. That's typical. Toward the end of the summer, you typically see, I don't know, if it's the sports and things like that start up. We get the smoke, things like that people just sort of start to get a little bit tired. A little more, this is the annual, going back just to 2008. But you can see it typically goes in the high 40,000 attendance rate into the low 50s. This year we went 58,000, and a couple years ago was one of the higher ones at 63. So kind of fun to see how those numbers go.
Was that 63 number the year Pullman's pool was closed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And even at that, even this last year, I'm sure Walter did the same thing. It's fun to cruise the parking lot and see what kind of license plates are out there. And you see a lot of Washington license plates, even when their facilities are up and running.
Sometimes it's close to half.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. So our temperatures, no surprise, it was really hot. This, you can see by the year how these kind of pan out. Typically, the 80 to 90 range is where it's highest. But you see in the 90 plus, we had 31 days this year where we were 90 plus. I mean, you look over at the cold days and you just didn't have them. Except the one where we had to close. At least it didn't snow that day. We did have that one year where we closed because it was snowing. Concession sales, it just goes without saying, the more people that you have, the higher the revenues are with that. This year being as hot as it was, the revenues went up, not significantly, but a couple grand. Pool rentals, this is what I mentioned earlier. We had the U of I and the swim clubs renting from us, that where typically they would be over at the U of I pool. That pool is open now, so they are back over there. So we likely won't see that again this next year. The scholarships, the Youth Scholarship Fund, you can see a little over $13,500 went toward the scholarships. And you can see the breakdown, season passes for the youth, $9,800. Good use of those funds. The non-residents, we just didn't see that. We have money in that fund for swim lessons for non-residents, and we just didn't get the interest this year. We had the residents, but just not non-residents. It was kind of odd, and I never did figure that one out, why that was when the money was available. So, and then the primary issues that we had that we had down at the pool, a lot of reasons I think fell into this, but we had a problem this year with bathroom in the pool, stool in the pool. Montezuma's Revenge, whatever you want to call it, we had it this year. Now, the numbers there, I mean, that's not really very many, but in today's age of social media, once somebody writes something down, everybody jumps on the bandwagon, and suddenly you've had, 10,000 of these, when in fact there really weren't all that many. But that's still too many. And for each of these, when you see this, I don't mean that literally, when you see these numbers. A solid, what happens is we have to close that pool down, and it's only for 30 minutes, but if you just made the trip, let's say from Lewiston, and you just get in there and they have to close the pool down while we're taking care of this business, they get upset. The opposite, where you might have diarrhea, that's a whole different ballgame. This is where your diseases come in. And we have to close it down for a minimum of 13 hours. So if you just paid your money and we just shut the pool down for the rest of the day, you can see why people would be really upset.
Question for you on that,
yes,
Dwight. So do we have a callback slip or something for somebody who runs into that?
Well, we just refund their money if they're drop-in. If it's a season pass, there's no refund. They just don't get to swim.
Being you're on this subject, earlier in your presentation you had talked about diaper control. Is this part of that?
Just about to hit that right now, yes. So with that, we sort of had the perfect storm this year when it comes to, we had a whole lot of brand new staff and management. We had a lot more high school kids that we, on the lifeguarding staff than we typically have. It was hot. And when it's really hot, and I got this talking to some doctors, that, you get in the water, you think you're hydrated because you're in the water, or the parents do, and they're really not. I mean, they're not out there drinking that water. They're dehydrating because it's hot. And we